Considered by many to be one of the greatest films ever made, Psycho is a 1960 American psychological horror film directed and produced by Alfred Hitchcock and written by Joseph Stefano. It stars Anthony Perkins, Janet Leigh, John Gavin, Vera Miles and Martin Balsam, and was based on the 1959 novel of the same name by Robert Bloch. The film centers on an encounter between a secretary, Marion Crane, who ends up at a secluded motel after stealing money from her employer, and the motel's owner-manager, Norman Bates, a lonely young man who runs the motel and looks after his invalid mother. Psycho was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Supporting Actress for Janet Leigh and Best Director for Alfred Hitchcock. Psycho is considered one of Hitchcock's finest films. Praised as a major work of cinematic art by international film critics and scholars, often ranked amongst the greatest films of all time, it set a new level of acceptability for violence, deviant behavior, and sexuality in American films, and it is widely considered to be one of the earliest examples of the slasher film genre. But there was a real-world inspiration for the character of Norman Bates, perhaps even more frightening than the film itself. Join us on Monsters and Myths as we examine the true story of Psycho. Psycho was written in 1959 by American writer Robert Bloch. The novel tells the story of Norman Bates, caretaker at an isolated motel who struggles under his domineering mother and becomes embroiled in a series of murders. The novel is considered Bloch's most enduring work and one of the most influential horror books of the 20th century. In November 1957, 2 years before Psycho was published, Ed Gein was arrested in his hometown of Plainfield, Wisconsin, for the murders of 2 women. When police searched his home, they found furniture, silverware, and even clothing made of human skin and body parts. Psychiatrists examined him theorized that he was trying to make a woman's suit to wear so he could pretend to be his dead mother. At the time of Gein's arrest, Robert Bloch was living just 35 miles away from Plainfield. He began writing with the notion that a man next door may be a monster, unsuspected even in the gossip-ridden microcosm of small-town life. Bloch had begun work on Psycho before Ed Gein was arrested. Bloch discovered how closely the imaginary character I'd created resembled the real Ed Gein, both in overt act and apparent motivation. He even inserted a line alluding to Gein in one of the final chapters. Edward Theodore Gein, born August 27, 1906, died July 26, 1984, was also known as the Butcher of Plainfield, or the Plainfield Ghoul. He was an American convicted murderer and body snatcher. His crimes, committed around his hometown of Plainfield, Wisconsin, gathered widespread notoriety after authorities discovered Gein had exhumed corpses from local graveyards and fashioned trophies and keepsakes from their bones and skin. Gein confessed to killing 2 women, tavern owner Mary Hogan in 1954 and Plainfield hardware store owner Bernice Warden in 1957. He was initially found unfit to stand trial and was confined to a mental health facility. In 1968, however, he was found guilty but legally insane and was remanded to a psychiatric institution. He died at Mendota Mental Health Institute of liver cancer and respiratory failure on July 26, 1984, aged 77 years. He is buried next to his family in the Plainfield Cemetery in a now unmarked grave. Soon after his mother's death, Gein began to create a woman suit so that he could become his mother, to literally crawl into her skin. Gein denied having sex with the bodies he exhumed, explaining, "They smelled too bad." During state crime laboratory interrogation, Gein also admitted to the shooting death of Mary Hogan, whose head was found in the house, but he later denied memory of details of her death. Gein was also considered a suspect in several other unsolved cases in Wisconsin, including the 1953 disappearance of Evelyn Hartley, a babysitter. Searching the house, authorities found whole human bones and fragments, a wastebasket made of human skin covering several chair seats, skulls on the bedposts, female skulls, some with tops sawn off, bowls made from human skulls, a corset made from a female torso skinned from shoulders to waist, leggings made from human leg skin, masks made from the skin of female heads, Mary Hogan's face mask in a paper bag, Mary Hogan's skull in a box, Bernice Warden's entire head in a burlap sack, Bernice Warden's heart in a plastic bag in front of Gein's pot-bellied stove, 9 vulvae in a shoebox, a young girl's dress and the vulvas of 2 females judged to have been about 15 years old, a belt made from female human nipples, 4 noses, a pair of lips on a window shade drawstring, a lampshade made from the skin of a human face, fingernails from female fingers. These grisly artifacts were photographed at the State Crime Laboratory and then disposed of. When questioned, Gein told investigators that between 1947 and 1952, he made as many as 40 nocturnal visits to 3 local graveyards to exhume recently buried bodies, while he was in a daze-like state. On about 30 of those visits, he said he came out of the daze while in the cemetery, left the grave in good order and returned home empty-handed. On the other occasions, he dug up the graves of recently buried women he thought resembled his mother, and took the bodies home, where he tanned their skins to make his paraphernalia. At the request of the defense, Gein's trial was held without a jury. He was found guilty on November the 14th. A second trial dealt with his sanity. After testimony by doctors for the prosecution and defense, Gein was ruled not guilty by reason of insanity and was ordered to be committed to Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. Gein spent the rest of his life in a mental hospital. His house and property were due to be auctioned off on March 30th, 1958, but there were rumours that the land it stood on might become a tourist attraction. Early on the morning of March the 20th, the house was mysteriously destroyed by fire. The similarities between the horrendous crimes of Ed Gein and the fictional character of Norman Bates in Psycho are striking. Both had an unhealthy obsession with their mother. Both lived in rural communities in America. But the story of Ed Gein has gone on to have a wider cultural influence in the horror genre. To name but a few, 3 Onomatook, 1973, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974, The Silence of the Lambs, 1991, House of a Thousand Corpses, 2003, The Devil's Rejects, 2005. The Greek philosopher Aristotle talked about the process of catharsis, a process where we release our negative emotions, perhaps by watching a horror film. In the end, the antagonist has to suffer, which gives ultimate resolution for the viewers. In creating the 1960 classic Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock and the author before him, Robert Bloch, helped to take this terrible story, this terrible real-world event, and turn it into a piece of art, an enduring piece of cinema which has been enjoyed by generations. thank you for joining us on Monsters and Myths. We hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, please subscribe, and take it easy.